With the undefeated season over, that means season 2 will be nothing but a disappointment, because I doubt we can do it again, but I'll try. In the meantime, we earned $41.8 million in revenue this past season. This does not go to the salary cap. Instead, it can be used on many things, one of which is the stadium for relocation, which I'm not going to do, or should I? Let me know if I should move to, Las Vegas. We can also use that money to upgrade the stadium. I'm assuming that will help with the stadium rating, but would also help with our fan support. As you can see in the balance sheet, there's advertising and fan appreciation day. That's mostly what the money will be used for, along with one more important use: maintaining our coaches. They cost money that isn't from the salary cap. I've never had an issue with money in this game before, but I've also never done a rebuild. If you're curious about how you earn money, just sell tickets for a high price. If you have home field in the playoffs, just crank the prices up on these bad boys, or you can just pick them up a few dollars to stay within the average like I do. Before we move on to the in-game off-season, let's look at the coaches we have. We still have 2 years left with Bill Callahan as our head coach. When you go undefeated, you can pretty much have tenure with the team, or you're forced to retire to avoid the shame of being fired. I don't see any reason to move on from Callahan. He's above average, but the players seem to really play hard for him. Unless the team has a terrible record in his final year, he's pretty much a Raider for life. Now our offensive coordinator got a head coaching job from the Buffalo Bills. Offensively speaking, he is a quarterback whisperer. I feel like I'm going to need that since Rich Gannon is most likely retiring. I would like to have a coach that can minimize the mistakes of a rookie quarterback if we choose to draft one, or start with Marques Tuiasosopo this season, because I don't think either option is great. The defense stepped up in the second half of the season, and a lot of that credit goes to Chuck Bresnahan. I think he's a very good defensive coordinator in this game, and I'm honestly surprised the team didn't offer him a head coaching job over Trustman. I'll be honest about our special teams coordinator. He's not great. He's on the final year of his contract, and considering that Seabass won best kicker last season, I'll let him ride out the final year of his contract with the team. Going back to Trustman, I would obviously love to bring him back, but the dude is 48 years old, and I feel like at this point, if you get a head coaching job offer, you take it. I wouldn't want to take away his only opportunity to see if he can cut it as an NFL coach. Plus, he's going to be $4 million a year as a coordinator if we match their offer. Let's see how his first year as the Buffalo Bills coach goes. I need to go and find a replacement offensive coordinator. There were names like Brian Billick and Paul Hackett who seemed like a decent option, and then there was probably one of the best coordinators available, Greg Williams. I just realized they don't have his first year with the Bills, which he went 3-13. It would be funny to have Trustman's replacement in Buffalo replace him in Oakland, but I just don't like this guy. So I ended up looking for a strong offensive line coach. I'm a big win in the trenches guy, and Muir got my attention. He was already given an offer from Tampa Bay, but I matched it, but Tampa Bay really wanted their guy, so they outbid me. I moved on and was interested in someone green. Ed West is that guy. It says he's a special teams coordinator and offensive coordinator, but after some research, he was an offensive quality control coach for the Falcons those years, which from my understanding is the most entry-level coaching job you can get. I gave him a 1-year prove to me you can coach deal. If it works out, great. If not, we can move on. He's basically a stopgap coordinator, because this offseason, I don't know if I'm going to have a quarterback ready, and would like my coordinator to get his guy and not someone forced onto him, like Marques Tuiasosopo. Alright, I've held off long enough. Let's go to the offseason. Let's see who retired. We have a lot of retirements. 7 players, 6 were starters on the team. Looks like Rich Gannon will be going off into the sunset with his ring and his MVP to go along with it. Out of all the retirements, his was the one I was most worried about. That means we have one of 3 options: start Tuiasosopo, a rookie, or sign a free agent to take over, and we have the 32nd pick in the draft. So drafting a good quarterback may be out of the question. Hot Rod Woodson.
The maniac loves you.
Didn't have the most productive season, but he is still a huge presence on this defense. Again, draft or sign a replacement player. Also, free agency is after the draft, which makes it kind of hard to decide what to do. Jerry Rice went off in his final season. If he wanted to, he could come back. Why didn't Madden ever have an option to talk players out of retirement? What's funny is that Rice went on for another season, almost finished his career as a Bronco. Tim Brown is also retiring after having a pretty good season. Wasn't Rice good, but he was a solid number 2, and he finishes his career with the Raiders, never leaving and finishing his career with another team. Nope. Never. Bill Romanowski. He's a dick, but he's our dick, and now we have to replace that dick. Trace Armstrong will never get into the Hall of Fame, but he probably one of the most underrated defensive ends. He is 30th all time in sacks in the NFL, will probably be 31st after Aaron Donald surpasses him. I think he deserves so much more love. We also have to say goodbye to Rick Mirer, 2002 NFL Quarterback Club record holder for fastest time in the first challenge. Rest those legs, sweet prince. Those are all the retirements. It wasn't that bad. It was bad. It was bad. We're now to the re-signing period. I'll go over the positions that have players needing new contracts, or like you can see, are in a holdout. We have 2 players, Kennedy and Gardner, who want a new contract. It's not even an argument at this point. We need to re-sign Kennedy. We need to keep this offensive line intact as much as we can. Win in the trenches, lose in the trenches. This is also a no-brainer signing. We don't have anyone else behind Gardner, and I doubt anyone in the draft or free agency will be as good as him. He has a few years left in the league. This will probably be his final contract. Also, Jenkins, he's not coming back. At fullback, we have Martin in need of a new contract, but it seems like they're not too important in this offense, so we'll be moving on without him and proceeding with Crockett. The wide receiver position is going to be an issue. Porter is a clear starter, but there's really nobody else behind him as of now. I'm going to re-sign Knight just so we at least have some depth when we eventually sign or draft a receiver. I mentioned earlier that I re-signed Kennedy, that I wanted to keep this offensive line intact. That also means having to re-sign Middleton. We could move on from him and test out Stinchcomb for a year, but if it doesn't work out, we'll be in trouble, so I'd rather just do what I know works, and I know Middleton works. Now we're in a bit of a different scenario here. Robbins is a solid player, but Treyu isn't that far off from him. I'm also really appreciate having depth for any position, especially offensive line, because if the line goes down, the team goes down, so I'll be re-signing Treyu. At right guard, we have the Honey Badger on an expired contract. He's not a bad player, but I'm going to move on from him. Collins is under contract for 5 years, gives me more than enough time to find a decent depth player, then eventually a starter. At right tackle, Slaughter, get out of here. You're not coming back. Next up, Stubblefield at defensive tackle. He's old, tired, and wanting to come back for more. I already have 2 decent defensive tackles in Mozzarella Perella and Coleman. I don't know if I'll be able to find a defensive end to fill the spot Coleman took over last season, and with Armstrong gone, I think it's safer to just re-sign Stubblefield, but I need to make sure I have the money to do so I'll circle back to this. With Romanowski retired, Tim Johnson automatically becomes his successor. With no depth behind him at the moment, it's a safer bet to re-sign him now so we can have a fallback plan if the draft or free agency falls apart on us. This player right here was the reason I didn't want to lock up Stubblefield. I was worried I wouldn't have enough money for Eric Barden. I don't know why, since I have $30 million in cap space, but I signed the man while I let his backup Johnson go. At corner, the only player who needed a contract was Love, but he's getting no love today. He won't be returning. At free safety, same situation with Tim Johnson. Woodson retired, which means big sexy Keon Nash is going to be the starter, and signing him would just be the backup plan until I can find a player to replace him in free agency or the draft. I did go back to Stubblefield and gave him what he wanted. Look, he's old. I don't expect him to play out the entire contract, and if he or Mozzarella retires, then one can replace the other until I can get some younger depth. Good luck to all the other players who will be hitting free agency this season. They weren't great players, but they were my first players, and I always remember my firsts. Very quick quickly, before I move on to scouting, I want to make sure that the computer wasn't making moves for me, and I forgot that they had this simple way for schemes. It's very similar to how philosophies worked in the later Maddens. I don't know how well these work. We'll see as the series goes on. I think it's a way to make sure that the computer selects players based on the coach's preferences. Moving on to scouting, each player you look into will have a rookie report like these that you see. The first phase is scouting. There's 3 phases, so when you select your 15 players in the first phase, it'll unlock combine numbers for all players, but will also reveal additional information for you for the 15 you selected. It's usually just small text details that give you an idea what your players do well or badly. The more you scout, the more text is revealed, the better idea you get of what kind of player you could be getting. I think this is a really neat idea, but I think 2K5 did it better. The only complaint with 2K5 scouting is that you can't really scout that many players, but I really enjoy seeing stats be revealed and deciding if you could put more time into them. Madden's approach is more text-based, which I think is more true to realism, but I prefer knowing exactly what I'm getting if I'm going to be putting the time into it. I'm not going to go into the players I scouted because it's really not that exciting, but I thought you'd like to see how scouting is done in this game. On to the draft, and since we won the Super Bowl, we're all the way to the bottom. And I doubt we'll be able to get a good quarterback to replace Gannon. By the time it was our turn, the quarterback that I scouted were all taken except for one. But I took Cedric Nelson with our first round. Now this is the scouting report for him. Need some work on accuracy, good velocity, and never rattled by pressure. This is what it translates to: 86, 68, 72. I don't know if scouting is worth it, or if the draft class in this game are normally this low and the ratings actually have more value, unlike later Maddens on this generation. Either way, let's see how this goes. In the second round, I ended up taking a chance on a player that I didn't scout, Randy Rogers. We need a replacement for Romanowski, and even though he's not terrible, these ratings are making me think this rebuild is going to be much more difficult than I thought. In the third round, I was looking for a wide receiver, and they took them all. Well, almost all of them, so I had to change plans and go for a free safety to fill in for Woodson's retirement. I think we're going to look for some help in free agency, that's for sure. At this point, I ended up looking for depth players. We let Slaughter go, so in the fourth round, this will be his replacement. We literally moved laterally on this move. Maybe I'm a terrible GM. We also had a guard position that needed filling. In the fifth round, I selected one. Parkman was better than the last draft pick, but not better than the Honey Badger. Guys, I think we're in trouble this season. In the sixth round, I selected a free safety, Kevin Bruce, and he was kind of okay. This might have been a dark horse pick, but he's probably one of our best selections based on draft value. Now for Mr. Irrelevant. Our final pick was to fill out another depth spot at outside linebacker. I selected Spencer Baker. He was a decent selection. I feel like this was a rough draft, but we'll have to wait and see how bad it really was. Also, this NFL draft class was an NFL glass class. Like, look at all these injury ratings. They're so low. It still throws me off that free agency is after the draft, but either way, we have holes at wide receiver, free safety, backup running back, and maybe quarterback, so that's where my priority is going into, and already it looks like there's nobody in free agency to pick up. Not many big names. Dennis Northcutt was the best receiver in the free agency, and he's an 81. He's no Jerry Rice or Tim Brown, but he'll have to do. I offered him a 4-year deal. That was a bit expensive, but he's only 26 and can still develop. I also noticed Willie McGinnis was a free agent. Maybe he'll be a Raider after all. I was tempted to trade a second rounder for him last year. He has declined quite a bit, but he's still better than anyone we have. I didn't give him an offer though. You know who caught my eye? Des White. I remember him with Atlanta. I completely forgot he started his career in Chicago. He's only 24 and he's fast. I gave him an offer as well. Hopefully we can replace Brown and Rice with him and Northcutt. The quarterbacks in free agency were not great. It looks like we're rolling with Tuiasosopo and the rookie this coming year, but just in case, I decided to get some booty, Josh Booty, as insurance. By the way, Dennis Northcutt got a better better offer from the Colts. I'm going to look for someone else, but White also got a better offer from the Bengals. I want Des White, so I gave him an even better offer. While looking for another player over Northcutt, I found Oronde Gadsden. You knew I was going to find another Dolphin to put on this team. Obligatory Gadsden catch. I didn't like how low our free safety was when we drafted him, and there was an old veteran who could possibly fit perfectly as a stopgap player, Jason Sehorn. I figured having old players on this team worked last season, why not do it again? I gave him an offer, and I don't expect him to see it all the way through. The last free agent I looked into was Eric Kelly. We let Love go, and this was just to fill that last spot on the depth chart at corner. Everyone but Northcutt signed with the team. I don't mind missing out on him since we got White instead, and Gadsden's a decent third. And that is it for the offseason. The preseason is up next, and before we get a look at the roster, turns out, winning the Super Bowl can give you a nice media contract. It looks like Father Time is getting to Lincoln Kennedy, who's still the highest rated player on the team. He might only have one season left in him, but he's one of the oldest right tackles in the game at the moment. Seeing how bad this offseason was, I'm not ready to look for his replacement. Charles Woodson is now the second best player on the team, and I was hoping he would have had a bigger improvement, but hey, he didn't regress. You guys remember when he got Tom Brady to say it was a fumble?
Doesn't take much pressure to knock it out at that point. Go ahead. Fumble. Or, in this case, tuck rule.
Shane Leckler continues to be one of the best punters in the NFL. Not really much I can say about him other than he was the 5th best on the team last year, and now he's the 3rd. Sebastian Janikowski has been the most improved on the elite list. My biggest issue with his improvement, he is the reigning, defending, undisputed kicker last season, and his accuracy hardly went up. It should be higher. I don't know how instant offense improved, but he did at the age of 32, and he's still improving his game. Sadly, he's got maybe 2 more seasons left in him. This team is held together with duct tape and rope. Once these older players retire, the ultra rebuild will begin. Thankfully, we have players like Eric Barden, the last player on the elite list, who is still young and getting better each season. The defense is by far the reason we'll be winning games this year. If you notice, 6 players this year were elite. One of them, Barden, was new. Last year we had 8. Keep in mind, 2 of them are special teamers. Last year we had Rich Cannon Gannon. This year we have Tuiasosopo. I think we might not be as good. Maybe. I'll give him a chance since he did improve over last year. Not a lot, but if he can get into the 80s by the start of next season, I think we can work with him. As you can tell, I'm already penciling in this season as a gas leak year. The rookie will sit behind him to hopefully learn. It's hard to tank when you still have players like Gardner who want to win. I do find it interesting that his speed didn't regress at all, but Wheatley slowed down. I wonder if it's a combination of usage and age that causes regression to happen, not just age alone. Either way, I think this year Vargas will be the backup behind Gardner. I don't really have much to say about the fullback position since this team hardly uses them, but it did make me realize if you don't use it, you lose it. Players who don't get used seem to regress harder in their older age. You can see his awareness went down a lot, but not his speed. I know you all were waiting for this one, but I don't think our receivers are that bad compared to last season. I mean, they're obviously worse compared to last year. Jerry Porter improved a lot and basically took over for Jerry Rice. I do think Des White can be Brown's replacement in a season or 2, but we do need to upgrade Gadsden eventually. Overall, not terrible. Another position where if you don't use it, you lose it. Roland Williams dropped all the way down the depth chart, but Jolly has been a very jolly surprise. An 8-point improvement over his previous season. That's absolutely insane. I didn't even think we used the tight ends that much, but I guess we did. Hopefully he can be a safety valve for Tuiasosopo this season. Left tackle Barry Sims will obviously be the starter. He's almost elite. I do have high hopes for Walker. He got some playing time last season when some of the injuries happened. He's still very young, so the thought process is Sims retires, Walker takes over, while Douglas is technically the backup right tackle. At At left guard, Middleton is almost elite. I'm glad I gave him that contract and didn't move forward with Stinchcomb as the starter. Middleton improved a lot, but somehow Stinchcomb regressed. I think Stinchcomb is a solid player to have if injuries happen, but I don't see him as a full-time starter. At center, Robbins regressed. Truth is, both Robbins and Shrew are on the back end of their careers. They're both solid players, but they're not long-term solutions. This is a position of need in the next offseason. Collins is the clear starter, and he's improved since last season. It does seem like I made a mistake in letting Badger go and going for a younger player in Parkman. Time will tell if Parkman can improve to be better. We already talked about how regression has hit Kennedy. Still the best player on the line, but his time is coming and it isn't looking pretty since Douglas is his backup at the moment. Position of need in this next offseason for sure. Am I wrong here, but did Trace Armstrong improve in his retirement? That just means number 98 is going to take over as the starting defensive end in his place. Another weak year on the defensive line, but said the same thing last year and Armstrong impressed me. I didn't like any of our defensive ends last season, which is why no one started in this group. I may end up doing that again, but so far this season, this position has only gotten worse. Eventually, I'm going to have to find someone who's a natural defensive end to start, but since at defensive tackle, we have 3 solid players, I'm going to do what I did last season and have Coleman play at defensive end, while Mazzarella, Perella, and Stubblefield will start at defensive tackle. At left outside linebacker, we have Tim Johnson. We do have more depth, but that'll be at the other outside spot. As of right now, Johnson will not be the starter going into the season and will continue his job as the backup. You want to know what's really cool besides the fact that Napoleon Harris is almost an elite player? His speed increased. I love the fact that speed and strength are abilities that can improve. Obviously, again, Harris is going to be the starter. Now, Rogers is going to be the starting left outside linebacker going into the season. I want the rookie to learn next to 2 really great linebackers in Harris and Barden. I don't think we need to worry about the linebackers group. One of the other strengths on this team is the secondary, at least the corners. Woodson is elite, but Buchanan has improved, and especially after his playoff run this past season, he's a great punt returner. Also, Kelly is a slight improvement over Love, while Asamoah improved ever so slightly with Shaw. We replaced one great old man with another kind of okay-ish old man. Seahorn will be taken over at free safety because I did not want to throw the rookie into the fire. I probably should, but I feel like the error for being bad in the secondary is much higher than for a linebacker or lineman. Remember last season when I said Gibson is our worst player in the secondary? Well, I guess he heard me because now he's like the second worst, which is good since even the worst guy isn't that bad. From what I'm seeing, it looks like it's better if you start your younger players, but as for this season, I'll continue to play it safe since I do feel like we should be aiming for the playoffs and the rookies aren't going to help with that. Lastly, Seabass is the kicker, Shane Leckler the punter. Let's get started on the season. I can't wait anymore. Season opener will be against the Denver Broncos. Boy, we might be in for a long season. We didn't score a single touchdown. Marques Tuiasosopo looked terrible. When you have no passing game, the running game becomes non-existent, and we were bad in this one, like really bad. At this point, I'm contemplating putting in the rookie, but for now, Raiders country, let's ride with Tuiasosopo. You know, this could be the reason why we're terrible. Our best offensive lineman was injured, and so was our middle linebacker Harris. Nelson, the rookie quarterback we drafted, was injured in the preseason, and I didn't plan on starting him, but now I really don't want to start him. I really didn't want our rookie tackle, Douglas, to take over, so I put in Walker to start. He's good enough, plus it could help his case to be the starter when Kennedy potentially retires next season. While at linebacker, we're kind of in a pickle. Do I let Smith play while Harris is out, or look for a replacement? Now, I did consider Godfrey at middle linebacker, but I ended up signing James Swan, who is a rookie. I'm going to ride it out with Smith. Swan will be his backup, and we now have our home opener against the Indianapolis Colts. Truth be told, we at least scored a touchdown this time. It's an improvement. Peyton Manning carved us up, which is to be expected, but Tuiasosopo did pretty darn well. Our running game is still non-existent, but Gardner has become really important in the passing game as a safety valve. I'm just happy we didn't get worse. We're now 0-2 and we're taking on the Houston Texans in week 3. Look, we're getting closer to winning a game. Imagine if we go 0-16. I don't think we will because they played this one close. I do think we're due a win next week. I'm still not sold on Tuiasosopo. It is night and day the impact that Gannon had on this team though. We swept the Chargers last year. They're also 0-3. Someone has to win. Guys, we won a game. I don't know how, but we won a game. It looked like they tried to give it up in the final quarter though. You know, each week Tuiasosopo is getting better. Is he Rich Gannon? No, but I'm not expecting him to be. Hopefully that win can get this team rolling, but it'll be difficult against the 3-1 Buccaneers this week. The Raiders pulled off the upset. I don't think anyone saw this happening, not even the Raiders. I think Tuiasosopo has proven he can lead this team. The running game is still struggling, but it's getting better. But the defense has stepped up, and look at all those sacks. I'd said they're going to win us a few games this year, and this one might be one of them. The trade deadline is here, and I flirted with the idea of trading for Mark Brunell, who was on the trade block. I think he would make this team much better, but with how Tuiasosopo has been playing, I don't want to give up a first and second for a player that might even hit free agency next year. So for week 6, we're sticking with what we got against the Saints. Boy, was that a mistake. I should have made the trade because I truly believe he was the reason we lost this game. Every quarterback has bad games. This was one of them, and hopefully it's not something that continues. It's a shame too, because Jolly had a great game, just no touchdowns. We now have another tough matchup against a divisional team, the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't even know how we won this. We are now half a game back from first in the division, and I really thought we were going to tank hard this season. I mean, we didn't even try to throw. I guess the coach just knows that we need him to play it safe, and it worked out well in the end. It helps that Gardner went off, but those fumbles have been a trend. We go into the bye week at 3-4, winning 3 of the last 4 games, and let's be honest, we should be 4-3, but it is what it is. We have an opportunity to go 500 on the year, this time against a different NFC South team, the Carolina Panthers. I talked a little bit how we might be a playoff team. I'm thinking we might be a playoff team. I mean, we snuck away with an overtime win, but good teams win close games, right? What's interesting about this win is that the rookie Nelson came into play, and he did pretty well. He could have came in during the 4th quarter and let that comeback win. Is there a quarterback controversy? Unfortunately, another major injury, this time Mozzarella Perella. This team has lost some big names this year, and that means Coleman is probably going to return back to defensive tackle for the rest of the season, which also means I decided to pick up veteran Willie McGinnis. I think you all knew I was going to bring him onto the team eventually. He's going to take over for Coleman, as Coleman will take over for Perella. While at quarterback, I decided to let Nelson start over Tuiasosopo this week after his coming out party against the Panthers. Week 10 and the debut of Nelson will be against the Chargers. Death, taxes, and the Raiders somehow beating the Chargers. The few guarantees in life. They were ahead 17-16 in the final minute and threw an interception that was returned for a touchdown. That must have been brutal to watch as a fan. The Raiders offense was terrible, and this was the second game that was won because of the defense. It did come at a cost. Charlie Gardner is now out for the year, and now I want to sit Nelson because he doesn't have his safety valve anymore to help him. That also means our running backs are going to be Vargas and Wheatley. I don't have a good feeling about this. We are somehow 5-4, should be 6-3, and take on a potential playoff team, the Tennessee Titans. We're frauds. I don't know what else to say. Truthfully, I don't think Nelson is ready, and all these injuries are beginning to add up, and you can see it. We were just blown away this game, and I think if we do make the playoffs, we'll be one and done. This is probably really bad to do, but I'm going to go back to Tuiasosopo. Nelson just isn't ready. It doesn't help that his teammates are dropping like flies. We now travel to take on the New England Patriots for week 12. We didn't score a single point. Yep, we're frauds. Our offense is terrible, and I think we've come to the realization that we need a quarterback. Should have probably traded for Brunell when we had the chance. Week 13, a divisional rematch against the Chiefs, and we're probably going to get destroyed. You gotta be kidding me. We let them score in the final 2 minutes. There must have been a turnover since they only ran 3 plays for 18 yards. This loss hurts a lot. It basically puts us out of the playoff picture. There are so many 8-4 and 7-5 teams that we pretty much have to hope all of them lose the entire month and we win out in order to get into the wild card. If we lose here against Jacksonville, it's pretty much over for the playoffs. Guys, I think it's over for the playoffs. What makes it so much more painful, this week we lost because Janikowski missed the field goal. If he makes them both, we win. That's terrible. Okay, so technically we're not eliminated from the playoffs, but we need everyone to lose. Week 15, Falcons, Sunday night. Let's show the world we're not frauds. This did not prove we're not frauds. This was like watching an Amazon Prime Thursday night game from a year ago. Nobody wants to see a game like this. I think the only reason we even snuck by the Falcons was because Vic got hurt, and even then the offense couldn't do anything. At this point, there's only one playoff spot available, and that's the Dolphins spot in the 6th position. We can still make the playoffs, technically, but we need a lot of help. We take on the Baltimore Ravens, who are 8-6, so this can benefit us if we pull off a win. I don't have high hopes that a playoff spot is available, but I just don't want to finish the season with a losing record. We're still anemic on offense, but Jerry Porter found a way to go off in this game to help pull us closer to a potential playoff spot. Maybe. Guys, there's a chance we can make the playoffs if we win next week and everyone loses. If we can get into a tiebreaker with multiple teams, the head-to-heads won't matter. This week we take on the Broncos. We control a little bit of our destiny. We had a chance to win the game, but we couldn't stop them from scoring in the final minute. That's 3 games that came down to the final drive that ended in a loss for us. We could be 10-6. Instead, we're 7-9 plus that loss to New Orleans. This was a heartbreaker. What's worse is every other team lost, which means we could have made the playoffs with a win. Instead, the Broncos got in and we missed out. In reality, we never had a chance. After looking at the conference wins, which would have been used to determine tiebreakers, we weren't even close, but we could have denied the Broncos. Eric Barden once again won AFC Defensive Player of the Year and Best Linebacker, this time losing out to Julian Peterson for the NFL awards. Randy Rogers, who was our 2nd round pick, was 3rd in the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Dana Stubblefield stepped up big this season, 4th in the NFL for Best Defensive Lineman. He was 3rd in the AFC, while Coleman was right behind him in 4th. While Best Kicker was somehow not Janikowski, and I feel like he was robbed. He finished 3rd. Our passing game was absolutely crushed not having Gannon as a quarterback. Nelson was terrible, and while Tuiasosopo had some bad games, he was serviceable, but I really do think I made a mistake by not trading for Brunell. Marques might not be the quarterback of the future, but I do think he can be a decent backup for now. Maybe he improves going into next season, but as of now, I need to find a better option. Cedric Nelson was not good. I don't trust him to be a starter, a backup maybe, but I better hope he never starts a game. Rushing was also bad this season. It didn't help that Charlie Gardner got injured. The season was riddled with injuries. Fargas was about what I expected him to be, but Wheatley is just not good anymore. I wonder if this is the start of his decline. A big injury, can't finish the season, lower than expected numbers. We need to figure out how to replace him this coming offseason. Fargas is obviously not the guy who's going to replace him, but I do think he can be a decent change of pace back, great speed. We just need to develop him more. I wouldn't be surprised if Wheatley retires this offseason. The receivers didn't exactly stand out either. The offense was just poor all around. Jerry Porter was our best receiver, and Des White had a decent season, but you can see the impact that Gardner had on the team compared to Fargas. Jerry Porter did have a better season in terms of stat volume than last year. I'm just players, hoping he continues to develop into a stud. And this is what I'm talking about. It feels like players in this Madden are very consistent. Des White performed just as well as he did any other season. Doug Jolly as well. It's really cool to see the consistency in players, knowing what you have in a guy based on their previous performance and not just ratings. I'm a little disappointed in Oronde Gadsden, but I should have known better. Now the offensive line was much worse this season. Was this because of injuries? Probably. Was it because our quarterbacks were too slow to get the ball out? Probably. Either way, we need to fix it. Eric Barden once again led the team in tackles this season. He was just as good this season again. 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, another Pro Bowl. This defense is gonna be fine. Randy Rogers also looked like he's going to be very serviceable his first few years in the league. I think it was the right idea to start him. The leader in sacks this season was Dana Stubblefield. More impressively, last season we had no one over 10 sacks. This year we have 3. Stubblefield was re-signed in the offseason. I was hesitant to sign him, but glad I did. With Mazzarella Perella getting injured this year, it turned out to be the smart option. Number 98, who supposedly is Tyler Braden, he blew up this year. 10 sacks in his first full season as a starter. I'm hoping this translates to a huge ratings boost next season. Roderick Coleman was already good last year, but this year he stepped up big, having to move back to defensive tackle. Didn't change how impactful he was on the team. Defense is by far our greatest strength. Willie McGinnis came in about halfway through the season, and all he did was get 6 sacks. No biggie. Mazzarella Perella was having a better season than last year before injuries hit. This was such a wasted season with all the injuries. With Napoleon Harris's injury, Smith came in and did a very serviceable job. Was he outstanding? No, but he was pretty solid. Harris still had some rust on him when he returned. I actually think Smith did better than him, but there's no way I can bench him for Smith when considering how skilled Harris is. I don't think we took the ball away as well as we did last season. Remember when I said Gibson was our worst player in our secondary? He's definitely out there trying to prove me wrong. Led the team in interceptions. Also tied in interceptions with Gibson. Like I said, this defense is going to be fine. It's the offense I'm worried about. Jason Sehorn was not bad. I don't know if he plans to return next season, but he's not the long-term solution for this position. Philip Buchanan also had a very solid season, similar to his previous years on the team. I still feel like Seabass was robbed. He put up as good of a season from last year. He should have been best kicker. Shane Leckler had identical numbers to last year in terms of average. He had a heavier workload with this offense being so stagnant. That's it for season 2. We finished the year 7-9. I do feel like this was a playoff team, but the injuries destroyed the season. And with no solid quarterback play, the offense looked terrible. On the bright side, the Broncos lost in the playoffs. That could have been us getting blown out by the Chiefs. Season 3 is coming up. Can I fix the sluggish offense? Or will I have to fire the coach and blow up the team?